Welcome to Style for Life. I'm Stephanie Rumble, fashion stylist, accountability coach, and your guide to feeling good in your body and your clothes. Based in Christchurch, New Zealand, I bring over 3 decades of experience in fashion, fitness, and wellness to help you feel strong, stylish, and self-assured. Together, we'll explore the emotional, physical, and practical sides of style because true confidence starts from within. No matter your age or size, you deserve to feel confident and show up as the best version of you. I truly believe this. This is Style for Life. Kia ora everybody, and welcome back to the podcast again today. It is the day after Mother's Day here in Christchurch, or Otahi, Christchurch, and I have been reflecting quite a lot on a question that comes up or is often at the forefront of my client's mind and my mind when we are talking about how to look after yourself. And the question is, how do you put yourself first, and why do women struggle to put themselves first? So I thought we'd first of all use this podcast today to unpack why people struggle to put themselves first, and then secondly, talk about how to do that, because I know that can be really difficult. Now, if you are any gender and you struggle with this, it is something that you might want to listen to. And I've been really prompted because a lot of my accountability coaching clients come to me because for many years they have not been able to put themselves first. So that is what happens. Their health deteriorates, things aren't so good in their life anymore, and there's an outcome or a result or an impact of not putting yourself first. So I have done some research this afternoon and come up with some bits and pieces about, first of all, why women particularly struggle to put themselves first. And I think this is not just in our Western culture, it's across many cultures from what I can see. And I think it comes about because of a deep-seated societal conditioning where we're socialized as caregivers, nurturers, and people pleasers. It's often associated with this whole training of being a good girl. And you think that you're only going to be a good girl if you do everything for everybody else. And I know historically this has been something that women have fallen into. And I had a very interesting discussion over the weekend with my daughters about some of the pressures that the woman in my generations, my ancestral woman, I got that right, the woman in generations before me have had in terms of pressures. So for example, Poppy was wanting to discuss with my mother, who's 80, some of the reasons why she didn't go out into the workforce. And we had quite a long discussion about this. And what came out of it is she said at the end of the discussion, I would have always liked to have been a teacher, but I wasn't a good girl at school. So this really ties into what we're talking about. So I mucked about and I didn't do the work. And so my father said I had to leave the school and go to another high school, which I didn't want to go to. So at 15, my mother left school. Now, she lived all her life thinking she'd like to be a teacher. And in this day and age, you could go back to study in later life. But for her, and she's now 80, in her generation, it didn't feel like she could do that. So at my age now, in my 50s, I feel like I could easily go back and study and train to do something else. But for her, it didn't feel like an option. Super interesting, right? So this good girl training often links to your self-worth, your sacrifice, and you feel intensely guilty or anxious, or you don't want to be labeled as selfish when you're setting boundaries. So often women experience extreme burnout from prioritizing other people's needs. And I know that when I was raising my children, I remember being quite young. So I started off having Zach. I was 26 when I got pregnant with him, 27 when I gave birth to him. And it's not that young, but it felt young at the time. I'm glad I didn't wait any longer. But anyway, it felt young. And I remember seeing many other mothers who were so tired, so burnt out, so frazzled, and so unable to hardly even able to function. And I looked at them and I thought, oh, those poor ladies, like, is this what it's going to be like for me? And by this stage, I already had a baby on board. So I wanted to know, what was going to happen. So I wanted to know what was going to change, what was going to happen when I had children. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to be frazzled and burnt out and tired and exhausted. And, I do know that the mother load is really high. So I could see that their needs had vanished, right? Now, again, and I also watched my mother, my beautiful mother, who I love, go through this. So, she didn't prioritize very much about herself when she was having children. Now, again, this doesn't necessarily just relate to women who've had children. There's many women out there who put other people first for a variety of reasons and don't actually have any children to put before themselves, right? So I decided not to be like this. I tried. I didn't want to be selfish and not look after my children, of course, but I did put some boundaries and some things in place right from the get-go. And I know that David and I talked about this because there's another problem that comes up, another reason why social conditioning and societal conditioning and gender roles play a part in this. So from a young age, women are taught to be nurturing, accommodating, often placing the needs of spouses, children, families above their own. And I know that that's what my mother definitely did. And I could see that obviously I had needs and so did David, but I really wanted our relationship to be equal. So I was very much committed to that in lots of different ways around domestic duties, around child rearing, around all of that. And again, there's some things that came into that sometimes made that possible and other times not so possible. So that's something that gets in the way for some people, is that societal conditioning and gender roles. And we notice it a lot too. We have a lot of international students who we host, and even in New Zealand, typically that nurturing and placing the needs of others falls to the woman. And it's partially how we've been conditioned across, as I said, many different cultures. And so we also have this good girl syndrome and guilt, which we talked about before. So it's like my mother, she needs to be a good girl and she wasn't, so she had to leave school. But also the good girl syndrome and guilt, women are socialized to believe their value depends on their usefulness to others. So they don't self-prioritize. They feel if they self-prioritize, it's wrong or immoral. And I actually have had this feeling myself, like, should I be doing this? And actually, is it immoral? And I know that it was interesting, as I said, coming back to the conversation for me when my children were young, how did I prioritize my needs? So I knew by the time I had children at 27, Zach, I knew that I needed activity in my life to stay mentally and physically well, particularly mentally well. I knew that my brain needed the dopamine hit that came from activity over and above anything else. So I needed that. So I prioritized that. So I knew that if I wanted this, I had to get my children into some semblance of a sleep system when they were young. And not everyone can do this. Honestly, for some of my children, I was really lucky. Others, it didn't work as well as I'd like it to have. So I know that the sleep thing was really important. And I really wanted to make sure that I was able to get my children to sleep well. And luckily they were healthy and well. So that was easier, not easier, but it was manageable for us. And so I would put my children to bed. So when my children were small, I would feed them myself. I breastfeed all of them for a bit, and at about 8 p.m. and then I would express some milk, and then I'd go to bed. And I'd leave David with a bottle of express breast milk and sometimes formula. I wasn't fussy about it. For me, it was okay. And he would then be in charge of feeding the baby and settling the baby at night. And I would go to bed, and then I would wake up anytime between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m., quickly feed the baby, and then I would go for a run. So I prioritized my health, and actually, and once I got that into a routine of that, I also started going and teaching classes at 6 a.m. so I could get my exercise in. So I did that for lots of years while the children were small. I was a 6 a.m. fitness instructor, or a 6 a.m. early exerciser, which I quite liked at the time and worked really well for my family. And it's not for everybody, but that was what I did for my self-care in those very early days when it was so difficult to get a moment to yourself. And I totally get that. So did I believe that my value depended on my usefulness to others? I probably did, but I think this whole good girl syndrome, if you set some boundaries, it's a really good thing to do, but you can trigger this learned sense of guilt, creating a feeling, like I said, that self-prioritization is wrong or immoral. And I actually had this. So some of my whānau members would say things to me like, oh, you're going for a run. Your children aren't going to be small forever. You can run up a mountain anytime when they've left home. And I felt so guilty about that. I had so much guilt, but I actually just did it anyway because I know I needed to. And I know that it's taught my children that I'm a worthy human as well. Not that you don't teach your children you're a worthy human, but it also, they could see that I had needs from the start, which was really good for them in terms of their socialization. I think sometimes too, if we think about our worth, it's tied to our productivity, our achievements, your ability to care for others, leading to an over-functioning role where you constantly feel the need to do more to feel enough. I definitely had this as well. So just thinking about this, women can tie their self-worth to their productivity, achievements, and their ability to care for others, leading to an over-functioning role where they constantly do more to feel enough. And I definitely got into that too. So it's not, your self-worth isn't about your productivity. And then there's a whole thing that we feel like we have to put ourselves second because we have a fear of conflict or judgment. So there's a fear of being perceived as selfish, harsh, uncaring. And it makes it difficult to say no or set boundaries, especially in caregiving roles. And interestingly, my sister and I are having this challenge with a whānau member at the moment too, where are our boundaries around this, and where do we say yes, where do we say no, and where do we draw the line and some of the communication, just so that we can protect our own mental health. And this is about both of us having the confidence and knowledge that we know that we need to look after ourselves. And I fully believe this. We say when we fly, put on your oxygen mask before you put on the oxygen mask of your child. How can you help your child if you can't breathe? Or how can you help another person, whether it's a child or whānau member, if you're not breathing yourself? So honestly, we do have that fear of being perceived as selfish, harsh, or uncaring, and it can make it feel difficult to say no or set boundaries, especially when we're caregiving. And I know caregiving doesn't necessarily have to be just for children. It can be for an elderly or a unwell relative or whānau member too. So I do know that there's that whole thing of conflict. So I feel confident about that now myself, but I know many people feel that they can't say no, or they just feel so concerned about their whānau member that they just keep putting themselves second. Another interesting one here that came up in my research was internalized self-abandonment. If you have lots of years of prioritizing others, you just actually lose touch with your own needs and desires. Like you just don't know what you need, and you just self-abandon, right? So I don't have any needs. You become a shell of yourself. Gosh, I've seen this so much, right? So you prioritize everyone else. You don't know what your needs or desires are. And you know what? It's a little bit like this. I listened to a great podcast this week from Mel Robbins about creating adult friendships. And it was a little bit like this too. You have to be, and she said, she spoke to another lady in the podcast, I've forgotten her name, sorry, about how to make adult friendships. And the guest said, you have to be a villager to be in a village. And I think this sort of relates to this comment too. You've got to keep practicing the things that you like and need in order to know what they are, right? So it's really important that you keep in touch with your own desires and needs. What do you need? I knew really clearly that I needed exercise when my children were young. That's what I needed. I had time to get away. My head was clear. I had no one at me asking me for things, drawing my attention. I was so happy to be in the freedom and flow of running. For me it was. And I'm not saying it's for everybody. Maybe just go for a walk around the block or get out away from your children. It's a real juggle, I know, nowadays too. Have you ever wondered how you can be a fashion stylist with access to premium digital styling products? Do you want to be trained by the best in the industry and access these products that reflect fashion styling in 2025? If you do, then Image Innovators is absolutely the choice for you. This is because they have a network of over 1,000 trained fashion stylists worldwide, and you know when you work with them, you're getting the best of the best. They have evidence-based professional training offered by highly skilled facilitators that help you reach your absolute potential. This is a great alignment with Style for Life, as I in my business have used and endorsed their products for over 10 years with so many happy clients. And I'm really excited to say I'm also offering training to fashion stylists in conjunction with Image Innovators. So if you're ready to start your fashion styling training journey, then use the code BRIGHTRED25 for 10% off all products. The other thing that can cause women to put themselves second is perfectionism and over-functioning. So you want to be a perfect parent, a perfect partner, a perfect employee, and you become overworked and under-supported, making it harder to make time for yourself. So perfectionism is a problem, and over-functioning is a problem too. You need to think about reframing this as a self-care, not an indulgent, as an essential act of sustainability to avoid burnout and maintain long-term well-being. So if you want to practice setting yourself first, you need to set firm boundaries, practice regular self-care, abandon people-pleasing habits, and prioritize your own physical and mental health without guilt. And I know that that's something that I definitely had to do and have to do continuously now. So say no to demands that drain you. Invest in what are your personal goals? Like, I have personal goals around running. That's what I like. And I have some goals at the moment around knitting some things through the winter. I know that sounds really old ladyish, but I love knitting. So I should do a podcast actually on crafts. So anyway, so personal goals around what you want, and dedicate time to activities that nourish your happiness, such as resting, and pursuing hobbies. So I was thinking about hobbies recently and what hobbies do I actually have? What do I like doing? And if I really sit back and identify my 3 key hobbies: running, reading, and knitting. There you go. And I haven't done a lot of the knitting. I've done a lot of the running, a bit of the reading, and now it's time for some knitting in the winter. And maybe I think I might need to find some other handcrafts type hobbies, because my hobbies are all so activity based, and it ends up being very, very tiring. But you always have a hobby that's actually very physically demanding. So I think also I really like doing yoga too, but I'm actually really useless at it. So, and I know some of my friends have set up a line dancing group, or they haven't set up, they've started attending a line dancing group, and I've tried a few times, but it clashes with my running group. At the moment, I'm still with the running. Maybe if my body gives out, I'll end up back at the line dancing. Who knows? Anyway, so let's look. We've spent the first half of the podcast working out why we might not put ourselves first. We're going to spend the second part figuring out how we can put ourselves first, right? So how do we do this? First of all, set boundaries and communicate your needs. So you need to be able to set boundaries in place. And this is about saying no, right? So decline requests without guilt, so you can protect your energy and your time for your own priorities. So if there's a request for something and you can't do it, sorry. And my sister is so good at this. She is so good at it, and in a really positive way, yeah? So if she can't do something, she says no. She doesn't give you a big long-winded reason like I tend to. So really, really good. So if there's a request that you can't do, say no. People that love you will keep loving you. Establish your limits, so communicate your needs in a straightforward manner, like asking for help with housework or setting professional boundaries to avoid overwork. Let's look at asking for help with housework. So I have a couple of strategies here. So first of all, I'm going to start with when you are living in a shared housing situation and you're we call it a flat in New Zealand, or shared housing. You have maybe 4 or 5 of you. You need to develop together a list of the tasks that need to be completed. Then allocate the tasks weekly to a particular person or rotate the tasks around. So everybody does their share of housework, because nobody have I met likes housework. So in a shared house. When you maybe move into a house with one other person, a partner or maybe a friend or whatever, then you need to work out who's doing what, when. Together, communicate, discuss it, right? And then if you move into a whānau situation or family situation, I actually taught my kids how to clean and a little bit how to cook. I fell off a bit on the cooking, but I taught them how to clean because I hated being in a shared house or a flat with flatmates who had not been trained domestically. So when I was teaching my children, I went through every room and I made a checklist of each task that needed to be completed. So they would only learn one way, right? The checklist involved things like clean the toilet, wipe the toilet like this, etc. So it gave details on how to do specific tasks to a standard that I required. So, they knew that cleaning the toilet didn't just involve squirting liquid into the toilet bowl and flushing and walking away. That's totally not cleaning the toilet. So I gave them some lessons. I showed them what to do in the first instance, and then they were required each time they cleaned that particular area of the house to check through the checkbox and I would go back and inspect. So we did this, they were very reluctant, and we did it with an incentive in mind. So when the children were small, we had a cleaner for a little bit, and then we were unable to afford the cleaner. And I said, if the cleaner is going to be let go, which they were, I will put the money aside I've used for the cleaner, or some of it, and we will go on a holiday. And we will save for a year. And I saved for us to go to China and run the Great Wall Half Marathon. And that was an amazing thing to do. It was in 2017. And we could only able to do that because we didn't have to pay for any domestic help. And obviously I saved in other ways too. And the children had to clean every Sunday. And every time they moaned, I was like, do you want to go on holiday? They're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. So let's do it. And so it was a really great incentive for them. And that went on for quite some time after the holiday, although the motivation after the holiday dropped off a bit. So anyway, we taught them all to clean. Some are better than others. I think my younger 3 children, no offense, Zach, probably are better than Zach. He always seemed to be training when we were doing this. At that point, he was rowing, and he always had the house vacuuming to do, which he did at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night. Anyway, we all learned how to clean. How do you set professional boundaries, establish limits to avoid overworking? I set time boundaries. So I work until this time, I work at that time. That's how I do it. So I actually have times that I work and times I don't. And when I don't work, I don't work. And when I do work, I do work. So people know where they stand with me. I give them, I'm very communicative about it, and I put limits around it so I can actually function. Yeah. Stop people pleasing. Stop managing others' comfort at your own expense. Oh, recognize that your needs are as valuable as someone else's, right? So people pleasing means that everyone else is good, but you're not. Why would we do this? Like, I am a people pleaser, but I'm also really committed to making sure that I show up as the best version of me. And I can be a much better person for other people if I'm not always managing everyone else's comfort at my own expense. So really hard in a caregiving role, really hard. And, you know, my sister and I are experiencing some of this with a whānau member, really difficult. So, you know, we have to be really careful about that. Yeah, prioritize your health, right? Treat sleep like 7+ hours. And I have to say that would be what I need to do. I'm very careful. I have loved using my Garmin watch to track my sleep. I've become a little bit obsessed about it. I know that my husband's like, oh, you're talking about your sleep again, but I love actually seeing how my sleep's gone. Eat nutritious food. I mean, it's just like prioritizing you. So nutritious food that meets your needs and looks after your body. And movement is a necessity rather than a luxury. I consider movement a necessity. So prioritize your health. Treat sleep, nutritious food, and movement as necessities rather than luxuries, right? So that's really a key one here as well. Then we've got also here a daily recharge. So spend 15 to 30 minutes a day doing activities that rejuvenate you, such as meditation, reading, spending time in nature, chilling out to a TV show. What do you need to do that rejuvenates you? So I know that for me, reading's really big there. I'd spend about 5 to 10 minutes every day meditating at the end of the day. I'm terrible at it. Just to try and do that before I go to bed. I love to always spend some time in nature. It doesn't always happen every day, but just pick some of those things that will actually rejuvenate you. Yeah. I think, and also regular checkups too. So schedule and keep appointments for your health. So things like mental health check-ins, medical screenings, actually checking in with other people and prioritizing also that connection. That's a really important part of your physical and mental health as well. I was really interested to learn about that yesterday in the friendship podcast that I listened to. It's social health. So how is your social health? Are you actually connecting with other people? So keep appointments for your health. Like if you need, for example, as a woman, you need mammograms when you turn 45, you get them free for a number of years. And also cervical smear tests are available for all women too. So all of those regular medical screenings, and if you're at risk for other things, take the opportunity. Recently, my husband and I have David and I have both had mole checks. Both of us have come up with things that need to be re-looked at. As a result, I had a skin condition that needed treating, and he's got one that needs further examinations. So yeah, regular checkup. So invest in yourself and in your future as well. So what are your personal goals? I was explaining before what some of mine are. Mine tend to sit around running at the moment. So what do you want for yourself, independent of other people's expectations? Like, I really want to go and run well at the Gold Coast, and I'm actually faced with quite a few challenges at the moment because I'm just sitting on this brink with a bit of a sore back and some discs that are not quite right in my lower back, and I'm really sort of juggling that. So, how can I get to that personal goal? It's not quite as easy as it was 10 years ago, but I'm determined to go and determined to make it work. So, and last week's podcast talked about how to keep moving when you are injured or have been ill. So yes, that's something that's very front of mind for me as well. Oh, create personal space. Oh my goodness. So designate as personal space or den in your home for relaxation and privacy. So we just have our lounge, we lie on the couch, or often my office is quite good for that too. Financial independence. So secure up your finances, set up a personal savings or brokerage or investment. I am absolutely committed to investing. I think it's really key, particularly investing in stocks, shares and bonds as opposed to property. For me, that feels like a better option. I think the returns are great. I'm not a financial advisor by any stretch, but I do have quite a lot of listening in that space. Girls That Invest is a great podcast. The Curve is a great podcast. Very good information about financial wellness. I suggest, highly recommend. Cultivate a self-first mindset. So it's interesting, men seem to be quite good at this. So as a woman, self-first without being selfish. What are your needs? And, how does that look in your life? So how does making you first work? Then identify toxic relationships. Remove or limit time with people who drain you and surround yourself with positive, supportive individuals. So, I think that's really, really important. And I've had to do that a few times. It's been really, really tough. I don't like having to do that. But, when you have people who you do like that are positive and supportive, then it's great. Practice self-compassion. Speak to yourself with kindness. Treat yourself with the same compassion you'd extend to friends. And unlearn self-sacrifice. Challenge the belief that you must always put others before you to be valuable, and recognizing that life requires prioritizing your own joy. Prioritizing your own joy is not selfish. So I've just jam-packed so much into this podcast this afternoon. I feel like I've hardly taken a breath. So let's just have a quick recap over some of the key points. So how do we put ourselves first? First of all, why do we end up putting ourselves last or second? Because of societal conditioning and gender roles as well, because we are socialized as caregivers, nurturers, and people pleasers. We have the good girl syndrome and guilt. Our worth is often tied to our productivity. We fear conflict or judgment, so we keep putting everyone else first. We have internalized self-abandonment, where we've just done it for years and think that we've not learnt any other way of being, and we can suffer from perfectionism and over-functioning, which isn't great either. So how do we actually put ourselves first? We do these things first. We set boundaries and we communicate our needs, whether that's around work, whether that's around personal time. And that's about establishing limits. So you're communicating your needs around maybe housework and professional boundaries. We stop people pleasing. So we stop managing others' comfort at our own expense and recognize we're just as important. We prioritize our health, our sleep, our food, our movement, and our stress levels, which we can do with accountability coaching if you want some help to get that sorted, or you want some help to get yourself back on track. We do a daily recharge, like meditation, being in nature, reading. We do regular medical checkups or health checkups. We invest in ourselves and our future. We identify our personal goals. We create personal space, a nice area in our room. And we have some financial independence. And we look at cultivating a self-first mindset. And we remove those toxic relationships from our life that aren't supporting us. And we practice some self-compassion. So that has been a lot put into a 30-minute podcast. I really appreciate you listening. And I just want to say here that I challenge you to do this now. If you need help to learn how to put yourself first, how to prioritize your own nutrition, activity, sleep, and stress, I can help you with accountability coaching. It's what I do. I have good results, and the people I work with seem to develop long-term habits that help them through their life. We teach you how to put yourself back to the top of the list. So I hope that has been helpful for you. It has been super fun to talk to you. Have a wonderful week ahead. Stay warm in New Zealand. It is definitely getting cold. And next week we'll be back with a fashion-related podcast. Kia kaha, everybody. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for listening to the Style for Life podcast. Don't forget, you deserve to feel fabulous at every age, every stage, and at every size. If you're loving the show, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps more amazing people like you find their way back to life through style. Thanks again. Until next time.